Hey guys, this is Pastor Allen. Here is your devotional for the book of James. Chapter 1. Guys, I grew up with how-to books. Growing up, I always liked to figure out how to fix things. And when I was growing up, we didn't have YouTube. So I would go on to the library or just find books that would help me to figure out ways to fix things. If there was ever a book in the Bible that would help us with our Christian walk, I would say is the book of James. The book of James is that book that gives us practical advice on how to live our Christian life. Who was James? We know from the New Testament that James was the brother of Jesus. He became a leader in the Jerusalem church after the death and resurrection of Jesus. He was respected for his advice and also for the wise decisions that helped to shape the church. So at one point, he decides to write down some of his best teachings, and that is how we end up with the Epistle of James. The word epistle is another word for letter. This is considered a letter that belongs in the general epistles because it is not specific to the letters of Paul, but rather it is one of the general letters that was not specifically written to a city or a specific church. So who was the audience behind this letter? This letter was intended for the Jewish believers that were scattered throughout the Roman Empire. And the book begins like a letter. It starts to greet those that are reading it, but then it quickly takes off and it starts to give us this rapid fire practical advice that is so needed for us even today. Rather than a letter of that day or that time, this is more of a collection of sayings and discussions on practical topics. The idea is, the focus is daily living. More like the book of Proverbs that gives us wise sayings, practical advice, and Ecclesiastes. So daily focus, daily living is the focus of this letter. It tackles issues like taking care of the poor, being responsible with blessings, watching our tongues, what we say, staying pure. It discusses unity and also being patient through trials. Open up the Bible and dive into the letter of James. We are quickly hit with this verse. On verse 2 of chapter 1, it says, "My brothers and sisters, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience." I don't know about you guys, but when I find myself in a trial or when we find ourselves in difficult situations, it is really hard to say, wow, I'm going to be happy that I find myself in a difficult situation. It goes against our psyche. It goes against our emotions to all of a sudden feel good about our lives when we're going through difficult tests. But here, the book of James encourages us to understand that behind our trials, and when I say trials, I'm not talking about those things that we put ourselves in, but rather those things that come at us that are intended to help us to grow in our Christian walk. Those difficult seasons when our faith is tested. I can think about our current season now, this coronavirus, and having this sense of peace and calm, knowing that if God is allowing this to happen, He will bring us out and we will be better at the end of this because God is working this out for our good. The purpose behind our testing or behind our trials is for our faith to grow and to produce something that the Bible calls patience. Sometimes it's called long suffering, which is the idea to have this endurance, like when you're running a race and knowing that there is a finish line, there is a prize at the end of the struggle. And rather than powering through and just trying to think of trials as sprints, this is more like a process where we lean on God and we press on and we get to run this together, and we know that in the end there is a purpose, there is a reward for the struggles that we go through, for the testing, for the trials. From there, we want to jump into verse 12. I don't know about you guys, but understanding that there is a blessing for those that are being tempted. Verse 12 says that blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown. There's that idea of a reward. When you have endured or gone through the testing, the Bible says that there is a crown promised for those who love him. And the understanding here is that we don't go through trials, we don't go through seasons of testing in vain. Like, there is a purpose, there is a reward if we're willing to trust God in the process and stand our ground. Another verse that jumps at me are those qualities that we need to have on verse 19 when we're going through these trials. Verse 19 says that we should be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. And then from verse 21, we are reminded that we should be people that are doers of the word, not just simply people that speak about it. That saying that actions speak louder than words rings true with this verse, because we have to not only read and talk about this or have these huddles where we talk about the Christian life and the Christian walk, but where the rubber meets the road, like they say, is when we step out and we get to apply all of this practical wisdom, all of this advice for how to live our lives. So let's recap real quick. We've talked about understanding that trials have a purpose. We should watch what we say. We should be doers of the word, and trust God along the way, because he has our lives in his hands, and all things work out for those who love the Lord. So that is our first day. Hope you guys are enjoying this Bible study. I'm really just having a blast going back and rereading the book of James, and praying that we can come together and just apply these principles and begin to see God work in our lives. Amen. Awesome.
These are your Fusion announcements.
Do you have a prayer request? Please send us a text or email, and we would love to join in prayer with you. Stay connected and find us on Instagram at Fusion Youth FW. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube page.